One type of help people also wanted to know about from you, which was even more discussed, was about red light therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Red light therapy as a support for your mitochondria?
Interestingly, the red light therapy is a pretty big thing now. There are hundreds of different devices, helmets, a hairbrush, band.
I think I've got one here, actually. I think this is a red light
therapy hairbrush.
Therapy hairbrush.
Yeah. Someone was just telling me their dad is part of a study now. He puts a helmet with red light, every day because he has like pre-dementia. By doing this, the idea is light is energy.
Yeah.
Right? Energy is not a thing, but it's the potential for change. It's the capacity to change something. Red light like this, especially the infrared that you don't see with your eye, can penetrate tissue. It can go through your hair, through your skull, and then into your brain. And then there, it seems to do something and change metabolism. So how is it doing this? The best hypothesis we have is that for light to do something in biology, there needs to be something in biology that resonates with it, right? That can offer the right amount of resistance, right? To the photons, the red light photons hit, and then there's transformation of energy. That receptor, the antenna, the cellular antenna for red light seems to be mitochondria. So there's something in the mitochondria where the electrons flow and then boom, they meet with oxygen to become metabolic water. That is called cytochrome C oxidase.
I'm going to try and say this in layman's terms. If I take red light and I put it on my skin, it doesn't even need to touch my skin. I can put it just close to my skin.
Yeah.
The red light is going into the mitochondria of my cell, and it's helping the mitochondria to become more efficient.
That's the idea.
So I should wake up every day and do bloody red light then.
If you're deficient in that way, that might be good. That might also offset, the natural order that your body has created.
Oh, what do you mean by that? You think it might be...
I think that in general, that's why I kind of veer away from supplements, because the organism is this beautiful dynamic equilibrium of like everything, energetically dancing with each other, where you have the mitochondria that transform energy, and then, genes are expressed, and then this other cell is doing this cell is doing this, and there's this beautiful balance. And when the system is out of balance, now there's signals like inflammation, right? Signals of this imbalance at an energetic level, and then that turns into molecular level, and then the system tries to come back into balance, right? And
wow, I never realized this, that too much red light can be bad for you.
I don't know if there's studies that show too much red light is bad for you, but there's like phototoxicity is a thing, and you can buy a whole bed of like really intense light. And I think if you stay too long in those, that's probably not good. There's a very compelling study that was published last year on blood glucose regulation. And I know you've talked about blood glucose on other episodes. Mm-hmm. How much glucose in the blood is really important because it causes this like energy resistance, energy friction in all of your cells, especially the brain perhaps. So when you eat a bunch of sugar or you eat a meal with carbohydrates, blood glucose typically spikes. If you get stressed out, just psychological stress will increase blood glucose. So those glucose spikes can increase energy resistance and then start to cause damage, accelerate aging, and so on. Mm-hmm. So what the body does in the normal healthy organism is able to regulate blood glucose. So if you eat a big meal, there's enough insulin that's released, and then the glucose can come into cells, into the muscles, and to the fat, and then you preserve, what's called normal glycemia, normal blood glucose. It turns out if you shine a red light on the back of people as they ingest a big bunch of glucose, the spike in glucose is not as high. And what they did in that study that was interesting is they measured mitochondrial metabolism through the mouth. You can measure oxygen coming in and CO2 coming out, which is coming from mitochondria. So you can measure the energy metabolism, which is really the mitochondrial metabolism, as people are doing this. And what they found is that people who had red light on their back, their metabolism was actually a little higher. So the electrons, the flow of energy was increased with the red light. And they think that might be why the glucose didn't spike as much, because the electrons that came into the blood were able to flow through the mitochondria. So this points to some regulation of energy regulation inside the mitochondria that I don't fully understand, but I think there's something promising here. And it certainly supports, the idea that energy modalities outside of our cells, light or electromagnetic fields, other human beings, that are, energetic process is affecting my metabolism all the time. We respond to each other energetically, metabolically. I think it supports that idea that you're in an energetic process and you're influenced by other forms of energy, even if you don't see it.
I'm really stunned by this idea that there is such thing as getting too much red light and that can have harm for your cells, because I'll be honest, there's been a couple of times where I just put that thing on and maybe like read a book for a long time, like an hour or two.
Did you ever feel adverse effects from this?
I never felt adverse effects. However, looking at some of the studies, it seems to suggest that red light therapy follows a bell curve model.
Mm-hmm.
They found in this one particular study I was reading about in 2009 that low to moderate doses of light perfectly stimulate the mitochondria to produce ATP and a healthy small burst of ROS, reactive oxygen species, to trigger cellular repair. However, this particular study also showed that when the dose is pushed too high, the light creates massive amounts of reactive oxidative species, and this excess oxidative stress overwhelms the cell's antioxidant defenses, completely shutting down mitochondrial respiration and inducing cellular apoptosis, cell death, instead of healing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This bell-shaped relationship is something we see in many domains of biology and physiology. Same as like workout, exercising. Like most people know, if you do a workout that's like half an hour, 2 hours, if you're an athlete and you're like really well conditioned, it's fine. And then you recover for 23 hours after your 1 hour workout. And that's great. It actually makes you more efficient. It gives you the impression you have more energy, which is really energy flowing more efficiently. But if you work out for 8 hours, that's not good, right? So too much, you crash. Not enough, you're not at your optimal. So where's the optimal state? And biology and the whole mind-body unit has kind of worked out through evolution and through your life and development to find this sweet spot.
If you know how to listen to it.
Yeah.
And that's easier said than done.
Yes. If you can live in alignment. And
there's a lot of noise out there.
There is. For the same reason you close your eyes earlier when I asked you to kind of feel inside. This is a good analogy for, I think, what it means to kind of listen to our energy. And maybe we could do a little exercise if you're interested.
Sure.
Yeah. So we'll do a little exercise. You can close your eyes if you want.
Everyone at home also close your eyes unless you are driving.
Yeah. And we'll use the breath. So you can start by just feeling your body. You can feel kind of gravity pulling your body down into the chair. And then we'll take a little breath in and then breath out and then all the way down and then hold your breath with empty lungs. And then hold there for as long as you can. And just pay attention to the sensations that are emerging in your body. Whether it's in your belly, in your chest, in your neck, in your head. And the longer you wait, the more intense those sensations are. You can hold for as long as you want, and when you can't, and just take a breath. Deep breath. What does that feel like?
I felt lots of vibrations. It's kind of like waves. I felt like kind of like waves going across my body, but it was almost like I could feel the energy moving through my body.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of how it felt. I suddenly was very apparent clear of my heartbeat. I could feel everything in a way that I can't typically feel everything.
Yeah. Any kind of negative feeling or any sensation that was uncomfortable?
I mean, near the end when I hadn't breathed in a while, it was a bit uncomfortable.
Yeah. What did that feel like?
Like I was starving for oxygen, like I was starving for air.
Yeah. Running out of air and like drowning is one of the most horrible, like aversive experience that I think we evolved to dislike, right? So what was happening there in our bodies as we were doing this is oxygen is being consumed by mitochondria continuously, right? Every millisecond, mitochondria consume oxygen. And now you're not bringing oxygen through your breath. And then they produce CO2, carbon dioxide, right? So mitochondria are burning the oxygen little bit by little bit, and then they're producing carbon dioxide, CO2. And we evolved to feel those signals very, very sensitively.
So that's the pressure that I felt.
Yeah.
That build up.
I think that, yes. So the subjective experience, right? What you described there is an experience of energy starting to stall. Because if there's no oxygen in your mitochondria, the electron's like, where do I go? And then there's like extreme level of resistance. Like the most extreme case of energy resistance, I think that most people will be familiar with is like a heart attack. My dad had a heart attack a few years ago, and he woke up during the night with this terrible contraction, like a pressure in the chest. And he said it was like 400 pounds, like pressure on his chest, terrible pain, worst pain he's ever had. What's happening? Like what is that pain? The source of that pain really is blood flow can no longer bring oxygen to mitochondria in the heart.
Oh, so the mitochondria are like panicking.
Yeah. So panicking is kind of we're imposing now an experience onto a biological process, but you have the electrons that are flowing through mitochondria all the time. They're flowing onto oxygen, right? From food to oxygen, and they're just nice, freely floating. That feels great. It feels like just normal life. And then all of a sudden, there's no more oxygen. So the electron, I have nowhere to go. That feels terrible. The electrons can't flow, so they start to backflow. That is what causes oxidative stress. That's why the heart gets damaged during a heart attack, right? Because the electrons can't flow to oxygen because of this little clot. And for some reason that we don't really understand, this feels extremely aversive. So what you experience there by holding your breath, and anyone who's listening to this can try on their own, hold your breath for as long as possible. It feels horrible. And now imagine living your life with just like 5%, 10% of this horrible feeling. Like you wake up in the morning and you have this like trace of like running out of energy, right? Running out of oxygen. I think that's what some mental illnesses feel like. And there's very interesting data showing that if you inject people with a signal of energetic stress, lactate, you can trigger a panic attack. You're not messing with the brain there. You're not like, kind of doing something to neurochemistry. What you're doing is you're injecting the human body with a signal that the mitochondria can't keep up with energy flow. You're tricking the body into thinking that energy resistance has just been jacked up to very high levels. This feels like anxiety. And people with traumatic memories, like post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, the simple injection of an energetic stress signal of lactate in the blood can reawaken traumatic memories. So there's this emerging notion in psychiatry called metabolic psychiatry, where people understand mental illnesses as energetic disorders of the brain. And what I think is happening in those kind of chronic state of ill-being, right, where people don't feel themselves, they don't feel well, the hypervigilance, anxiety, it's quite likely at this point, I think, that part of that is driven by energy not flowing properly. And then the body just lives at high energy resistance all the time. And there's data directly measuring energy resistance in the brain from a group, McLean in Harvard. And then lactate tends to be elevated in people with mental illness. And this marker, GDF15, also is elevated in mental illness.
And so the cure again, or the thing to ease that, is all the lifestyle factors that we talked about, purpose, and check we've covered that ground.
Yeah, life changes, changing your life circumstances, that's really hard to do. Exercising seems to help a lot of people, but a lot of people don't feel they have the capacity to exercise. And ketones seem to be life-saving for some people. Going on a ketogenic diet, and I've met now dozens of individuals whose lives were crushed by schizoaffective disorder, bipolar disorder, major depressive disorder, and they were treatment resistant, right? Meaning like the pharmacotherapy, the drugs that they were given were not helping. In some cases, were making things worse with like difficult side effects. And then they changed their diet, cutting all sugars, and they went on a ketogenic diet, medical ketogenic therapy. And then they started to monitor ketones. And many people reported, that this was life-changing. Like the first thing many people notice is they have more energy. The ketogenic diet does not work for everyone. We don't know why. And the same way that we're all different, we all respond differently to even medications, right? That are supposed to work the same for everyone. We have a science of averages. Like the science that we use to get knowledge, to inform our lives, is almost entirely a science of averages. Meaning like all of the studies we do, like the highest gold standard studies, we consider to be RCTs, randomized controlled trials. These RCTs, if you run an RCT, what you do is you take, let's say, 1,000 people, then you randomize 500 into this group, normal diet, and then 500 into ketogenic diet. And then you say, great, now let's look at their depressive symptoms, right? Or their anxiety symptoms. And then you have them on the diet for 2 months, and then after you assess, and then you compare the groups, right? You lump 500 human beings together, And you say, what's the average depression or anxiety symptoms in these 500 people? Then you average these people together and then you group them and then you compare means.
And I guess the other important point here is gender, which is so many of these studies were skewed towards men in many cases, and that doesn't apply to women a lot of the time.
Yep.
And this is part of the reason we've had so many conversations on this show about women's health, is because we're just now discovering that, once upon a time, scientists would treat women like little men and assume that everything just applied, but actually we're entirely different. And so this averages thing, you also need to think about the nuances of like who, gender, where they're from, their biology, their DNA. You just said that you get the skinny fat thing or the visceral fat, whatever. I don't get that.
Mm-hmm.
But if we were doing an average of like 3 people, maybe we'd come to a conclusion based on me and the other person who's like me, but that wouldn't apply to you.
Yeah. And that's really problematic. Like all of the health recommendations that we have and the way drugs get approved and the way we determine whether a drug is useful or not for disease X or Y is by comparing groups. And whenever you peel the surface of a clinical study, of an RCT, you find some people like are amazing responders and they're cured. They don't have symptoms. And then some people don't respond. These are called non-responders. And then some people get worse.
The most commented thing across the videos you featured on, and the most passionate thing, the most urgent thing according to the people that were watching your work that they wanted to ask you was about long COVID, ME, CFS, I'm not sure what that is, and fibromyalgia. For patients with ME, CFS, and you'll have to explain to me what that is, or long COVID, the standard advice given is to exercise for mitochondrial health. But for them, it often triggers severe crashes. What is happening at the cellular level when the energy budget is broken? And how can these individuals safely rehabilitate their mitochondria without causing further damage?
Yeah, that's a really tough problem. And
this was repeatedly the most liked, the most commented thing on your videos. Because these people are suffering and they're just not being given answers, I guess.
Yeah. In the US, there's an estimated like 3 to 5 million people who have either myalgic encephalomyelitis, chronic fatigue syndrome, ME/CFS, or long COVID version of this. In the UK, it's somewhere between like 2 and 3 million, I think. And then worldwide, there's 24 million people have these syndromes, right?
What are the symptoms for someone that hasn't experienced it? What are the symptoms that they're experiencing?
Chronic fatigue.
Just always being sort of tired and low energy, feeling low energy.
Yeah. Feeling low energy is an experience, right? So you go to your doctor and say, I feel so tired. And then you look in the blood works, like everything's fine. But so there's a disconnect between what we know how to measure biochemically and then what the person is experiencing. We don't have a good understanding of the connection between the biology and the biochemistry in the blood and even process in the brain and how people feel. So there's a disconnect here. And ME/CFS, chronic fatigue, long COVID, these people have been a little bit ostracized from the medical community because doctors are really stuck. They have these patients, which are really difficult patients to deal with. First, they don't know what's wrong with them. And second, they don't have tools to help them get better. And then the classical thing is, well, exercise. But then many of these people, when they exercise, they actually get worse. And there's some studies that show increased inflammation. So those signals of energy resistance, increased energy friction in the body, go up after exercise in a normal person. And these people with chronic fatigue, it seems like they can skyrocket. And then that leads to this post-exertional malaise, right? We talked earlier about how the marker of energetic stress, GDF-15, can go to the brain and make you feel sick, right? Or make you feel, nauseous or, tired. Other cytokines from the immune system when you're sick, when you're fighting an infection, do the same thing. The best study on mitochondria and chronic fatigue syndrome was published last year or the year before, and it showed that there is a deficiency in energy transformation in the mitochondria, the muscle. They took muscle biopsies, a little piece of muscle from the quad, from the thigh, and then they looked at how well can the mitochondria in the muscle of people with chronic fatigue syndrome flow energy. And what they found is the capacity is much lower. If the mitochondria can't flux energy properly, you should feel like you don't have the capacity to push, right, to exercise. So why is that? Why do those people have lower mitochondrial energy transformation capacity? We don't know. There's so many stories, and I've been curious and interested about this. And I remember this family friend who came for dinner one night, and she was asking me, what do you work on and what do you do? And so I tell her we work on mitochondria and psychobiology, mitochondrial psychobiology, how the mind and the body relate, energetically. And she said, well, I have an interesting story for you. I was like, okay, what's the story? So I used to have chronic fatigue syndrome. So I perked up. I was like, what happened? She was visibly an energetic person. It didn't look like she had, an issue with energy. So she said she was in her 20s and she was debilitated. She couldn't work, and, she lived in this place, and, her life was kind of, completely upside down because she didn't have energy to do anything, which is, I think, a common story. And she was in bed like multiple hours, every day, and struggling to go get groceries, and everything was a drag about life. And then one summer, this guy from Hawaii, which was a friend of a friend, came over for the summer, just for a little trip, and they had an affair. She had a boyfriend, and this was a long time that she had a human connection like this.
So you're saying?
I'm not saying. What ended up happening is, she said, my chronic fatigue kind of lifted, and I didn't have to do anything. And then after that summer, she never had chronic fatigue again, and she kind of reintegrated the normal life. I don't know what the lesson is here. I don't know if there's a generalizable principle, but there's a lot of those stories where people end up in a really dark place in their life, and either they're diagnosed with a mental illness or with chronic fatigue syndrome or with kind of a psychosomatic, label or whatever that is. There's always kind of precipitating conditions. Sometimes it's in response to medical interventions like immunization. Sometimes it's in response to, an infection or like a parasite.
Mold and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I've listened to people that have like mold poisoning or whatever, and they get...
Yeah, very often there's like a trigger. There's like sometimes a lingering kind of condition, and then sometimes there's an acute trigger, and the body's never able to fully recover. So what do we take from that, story of a summer fling?
Well, I take from it hope.
Yeah.
That, even when the cards seem to be stacked against you and it feels like you might have to live with this thing for a long time, that in many cases, miraculous things happen that defy the odds. And hope itself, I think, can keep us in an optimistic mindset. If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.